Welcome to Missing Artwork, a show that lets artists behind your favorite album art tell their story and experience in making the iconic image of the music you love. I'm your host, Michael Escanuelas, and today we're talking to Dewey Saunders, the designer behind the album art for Malibu by Anderson Paak. Dewey Saunders is a Philly-based graphic designer and illustrator with a style that leans towards collage work using vintage print materials. Similar to the layouts you would find in old skater magazines, his work conjures memories of paper material layering not often seen in the digital age of design. For the last 3 years, Saunders has been working with hip-hop and R&B artist Anderson Paak, creating album art and tour posters. He is also responsible for the artwork of Paak's most recent album, Malibu. Paak's sound is a unique mixture of hip-hop beats and smooth vocals, with a delivery reminiscent of 1960s funk. His voice was most recently used in Dr. Dre's latest album, Compton. The artwork for Malibu depicts a vibrant sunset on a beach where Paak, eclectically dressed with a suit and top hat, is playing piano while a mix of juxtaposing elements fill the sand, sea, and darkening sky. The artwork is a beautiful mixture of chaos with a hue of vintage textures and colors. In this episode, Saunders breaks down how the elements of this artwork came together and how the involvement of Paak and creative director Corey Gomberg influenced his work and his Thanksgiving.
Hey, what's up guys? My name is Dewey Saunders and I'm a graphic designer and visual artist based in Philadelphia. I'm originally from Florida and I do mostly all of Anderson Paak's artwork, and basically I'm an album art specialist. The initial inspiration was actually from a 10cc cover, and it's funny because I had just discovered that band and started getting into them because they're almost like, everybody's into Tame Impala now, but 10cc is kind of almost the original of that sound in a way. But so there was this cover of a sea diver, and he was coming out of the water on a dock holding a girl, and we were really inspired by that image, and we kind of used that as a jumping off point, and as the project went on, it totally became something else. But a lot of the initial ideas came from Corey, and we would brainstorm, and Corey is really well versed in a lot of record art and just music in general. So he set up a whole photo shoot out in LA with Anderson and all the models, and then basically sent me all the images to collage around and behind and in front of. So we were able to just create this landscape for Anderson basically, and this whole narrative based on Malibu and being by the ocean, and and it really all started with the singles, because before the Malibu cover was even going, we did the singles for Am I Wrong with Schoolboy Q, we did Room in Here with The Game, and we also did the first single artwork was for The Season / Carry Me. It's a 2-part song. But yeah, the Malibu project was, the culmination of a couple years of work, and starting off with the singles and creating this aesthetic with Corey, basically.
Layers play an important role in Saunders' work. With Malibu, every little detail is a story element to the narrative Paak and his team wanted.
I have a huge collection of vintage magazines, such as National Geographics and Esquire and stuff like that, but also vintage Playboys and all kinds of stuff, really, old books and publications, just hard to find and rare stuff. The sky and the cover is actually pulled from a vintage postcard. It's just your beautiful sunset over the ocean, and then obviously the sun was not that big, so we made it pretty surreal, and that's what I really like about the cover, is because it almost has a realism to it, but it's a magical realism because the scenario is super bizarre and supernatural. There's no real way I can describe the process. There's certain moments that happen when everything starts clicking, and Corey he's very verbose, and he likes to talk it out, but then I'll get off the line and I'll do my thing for a couple hours and just kind of get into the zone. The car obviously didn't like fit, but it did fit to me. And his idea was to get buttons in there that Surfer, the black dude in the right corner, he's like ripping the wave. And we had buttons in Venice too, so that was like one thing that continued on, which is really cool. The boat and the whale, like everything was added in there to add a perspective, really. And I think the buoys on the left were one of the things that really created the perspective, because it just kind of goes back into infinity at that point.
Scattered throughout the artwork are objects, small and large, all holding a significance to a larger vision. From the small shells buried within the sand to the large upright piano that Paak sits at, deep in focus on the music he's playing.
Creating this artwork digitally allowed me to really create a sense of layering that it's hard to do handmade. But I do like to work handmade, but this project didn't allow that. And I think that's a good thing. Just even a little splashing, like right over his leg, like that's something that it just creates this motion, which I think, all in all, it just adds to the moment, because you have the infinite perspective, and the sense of space is pretty vast, because all the detail is really happening on the bottom half of the cover, and then it's just the type and the sun on the top half. So I think there's like it's like an epic sense of space and proportion, and then the waves crashing all around him. There's probably like 10 different pieces of waves, and like the Photoshop file was just a nightmare, because it was like 200 different layers, and all the layering of the paper and all that. I was saying that it reminds me of an oil painting in a way. Just the kind of tones, and it's almost like this Baroque or like Renaissance painting. The way there's like stains and just the color palette in general. So that's another thing that kind of adds to the timelessness. And that was our main goal for the album artwork, because we were approaching it as if it was, like a 70s double LP, like almost like a new version of like the hip hop R&B, like Sgt. Pepper, like something like that. Like, we wanted to add an element of discovery. So when you did get the record, like the listener and the viewer would be able to like pick out elements that's you can't really see on Instagram,
At the top of the piece, the word Malibu shines with thick sea green lettering, sliced in a way that creates an illusion that the letters were forged together with paper. Just below reads Anderson Paak in a thin sans serif font.
So the font was actually more of Corey's doing. He was handling a lot of the type, and he kind of like came up with a simple typography scheme for the singles. And he has a good eye for that, and he came up with the font choices. We had a couple different options, and it was a decision between Anderson and me and everybody, but yeah, Corey designed the typeface. I think it's perfect, and I was able to bring it into the to the cover and put my like layering and kind of like old paper effect over it, which just kind of really sucks it in and makes it cohesive and part of the piece. It almost like coagulates all together, and looks like one piece. So the color palette is definitely like sepia inspired. The sunset definitely set it off, and then the oceans that I found kind of went with that, and almost like a high contrast kind of way, like the red and the blue. I typically really wouldn't normally do in my own work, but it just happened to work really well. And then changing Anderson to black and white and keeping that sepia as well, it almost created this not gothic, but it has like a very moody vibe to it. Hard to put a name on what the genre, but I think it's kind of like a magical realism, and my style is very surreal as well, but kind of in a quieter, I would say, like Rene Magritte kind of way, where it's like, it looks kind of ordinary, but when you take a look closer, it's very, very bizarre. he's playing piano and he's so into it, and the tide is just rising and there's just chaos around him, and he's just playing this beautiful music with a top hat and a peacock feather in it. I mean, yeah, it's hard to put into words. Yeah, I think you just kind of have to put the record on and listen to it. You know, it just made sense. Anderson's music is almost like a collage of genres in a way too, and there's just like a lot going on. But even though there's so much going on, I think there's like an interesting moment of quiet, like this surrealistic moment happening in the cover.
Much like any great piece, Malibu was not without its last-minute revisions.
You know, we were under pressure to get this cover done, and the image actually changed. He wasn't really always playing the piano in the cover. We had him similar to the 10cc cover where he was holding the girl, and one night the cover was due on Thanksgiving, so we were like, after Thanksgiving dinner, it's almost like 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I'm like super beat, you know what I mean, after all that turkey. But we had the cover almost done, and it was coming together, but Anderson was in Canada, I believe, on tour, and he made the last minute decision to change the photo, and I totally agree with him now. But, you know, at the time it was a little tough because it was so late, and I was like, I just wanted to get it done. But it really came together perfectly because that was the only photo that we had that would work, and it worked so well too. It just kind of like snapped in there, and we were like, yeah, this is really good. So, you know, a couple of changes after that to get it to fit, and it was kind of a wrap, and we got it out on time. You know, it went through at least like 30 iterations that looked very similar, but little elements were moved around. We just, you know, it had to be perfect, and like you were saying, the balance is one thing. And the contrast of the elements, I think, worked really well too, because there's a couple of big pieces and a lot of the small pieces help the movement visually kind of circle around and kind of keeps you looking. You know, there's something that happens when you're collaborating that you can't really achieve solo. So it's nice to be able to work with like really talented people.
For a project like Malibu, it's hard to believe that all the pieces came together so well.
Anderson takes the artwork very seriously, which I totally respect, and it's just an honor to be able to like, you know, match the music, which I like so much visually, and for him to, you know, allow us to do our thing and really kind of go in on it. And afterwards we were texting back and forth with Anderson, and everybody was just like super happy with it, and it felt so right. So yeah, there was like a kind of like that moment on Thanksgiving night where we switched the picture, and it just became like kind of epic. So that's the story.
But with the right team of talented artists, the possibilities are as endless as the amount of layers found in Saunders' raw Malibu Photoshop files.
You know, I knew this was going to be a big album, but I knew that Anderson was blowing up, but at this point, it's just really great to see the level, and, you know, he's blowing up fast, but he deserves it because the music is so good, and he's like a really great guy and like a true musician. His drumming is sick, and just one of the best vocalists in the game. So I might be a little bit biased, but you know, there's a lot of garbage out there, and he takes the art seriously, and I respect that. So it's really cool.
Missing Artwork is a collaboration of Chris Lantinen and myself, Michael Escanuelas. We are part of the Modern Vinyl family of podcasts, which represents other great shows like Misaligned and Vinyl Crawl. Check out modern-vinyl.com to see the latest vinyl news, features, and to find out more information about our podcast family. Thank you to Mark Reddito for our theme music, and of course, thank you to Dewey Saunders for being our first candidate for this show. We are still in our podcast infancy, so please go rate and subscribe to our show on iTunes and share us with your friends. We're always on the hunt for new listeners. Thank you for listening.